there are certain key elements that I think that making sound provides for all children. It's like we are hardwired. It's part of our DNA to make sound because it's collaborative, it's communicative, it tells stories. You can express emotions with just sound, no words. And I think that what it does is that every child, they don't have to learn anything new. All they have to do is just be their beautiful, lovable selves. And when they make sound, for that instance, as they're making sound, they are controlling their environment.
Welcome to Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan. I'm Dr. Dan. This show is about making the world a more loving, accepting, and compassionate place, one parent, one person, and one child at a time. The key to raising healthy and engaged kids is for parents to seek the same in their own lives while striving to be the best versions of themselves each day. No matter who you are or where you came from, with increased awareness, you can be purposeful about leaving a healthy footprint for your children, your family, and all those you care about, while living your own life to the fullest. Today's show is Creative Sound Play with Hayes Greenfield. Hayes is founder of Creative Sound Play, a sound-based generative learning system for pre-K, as well as an award-winning jazz musician, notable film composer, and innovative educator. His brand new book, Creative Sound Play for Young Learners, A Teacher's Guide to Enhancing Transition Times, Classroom Communities, SEL, and Executive Function Skills, invites educators, practitioners, and families to use sound making as collaborative educational play. Hayes began working as a teaching artist in public and private K-12 schools, where he created and implemented curriculum for K-12 students and professional development workshops for special needs teachers in New York City. Notably, he created a pre-K program for PNC Bank's Grow Up Great initiative, devoted 5 years to codifying creative sound play at the Lenox Hill Early Childhood Center's Head Start program, and consulted at Bank Street Head Start. A jazz musician, he has released 10 critically acclaimed CDs, including 2 award-winning family CDs, Jazz-A-Ma-Tazz and Music for a Green Planet, and has performed at festivals and venues throughout the US, Canada, and Europe. Hayes' music has been wonderfully received and reviewed in the New York Times, the New Yorker, Wall Street Journal, Billboard, Child Magazine, Downbeat, Jazz Times, and many more. And as a film composer, he has scored more than 70 films, documentaries, commercials, animations, and TV specials. Hayes, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dan. It is an absolute pleasure to be here to speak with you, and thank you for the opportunity for your listeners.
I am. So as I was reading your book and learning about you, and now, right now, I want to celebrate you as a fellow dyslexic.
Fellow traveler.
Yes, a fellow dyslexic traveler, working my way through lots of words with all your accolades. I just celebrate you, and I wanted to talk about this journey, but to write a book, to be a dyslexic, and to have written a book, did you ever think that this would be part of your life path?
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Never. I mean, well, we have a lot to share about dyslexia.
We do.
I went to a very intense high school, and the idea of going to college and putting myself into that pressure cooker, and that was beyond me. So I opted out, and I didn't go to college. Well, I went to Berklee College of Music for strictly to study with a saxophone player, and he wouldn't take you on unless you went to Berklee. So I was in a completely non-accredited program, and just really went to and only lasted like 3 semesters. And then my alternative route was to find masters. and to study with people that I love their playing, or even in the developmental child world. I heard Clancy Blair on the radio, and he's a developmental neuroscientist who's championed tools of the mind. I don't know if you know Tools of the Mind, but it's a great, And then I was listening to the radio, and I heard Adele Diamond, who's her data for the last 35 years has shown that if you can enhance children's abilities with executive functions, those children enjoy learning, go on to finish college, and do better in school. So that was my road. But along the way, and I'm wondering about this with you, because you're a psychologist and you've written books.
Yes.
And I guess that's just then what happens is and how did you do it? For me, it was just like I came across this material, and I just felt it was an obligation to get it out. I never thought of any of this that I've been doing for the last 25 years in terms of a job or doing it that it would make money, especially not in pre-K, because everybody says, hey, in pre-K there's no money, and I still haven't made any money. So.
Yeah, we can talk about that, right?
So how about yourself? How did you?
Yeah, so that's why I could really resonate about writing a book. My first book, I collaborated with a friend and colleague who said, hey, we should write this book on raising creative kids together. And I'm like, I'm not really a writer, and I don't know that I, have much to say about that. And so, as with you, there's all these instrumental people in your life who help bring you along and then give you confidence in their belief in you, which I know the individuals that you mentioned did a similar thing for you. And then with my first one, this is actually a funny story, and then I'll tell you what the process is quickly for me. I had done some videos on anxiety about taming the worry monster. And people kept asking me for, hey, where's your book? Where's your book? I'm like, I don't have a book. And then the publisher who I had co-written that first book with, I approached and I said, hey, I'm not sure. People are asking. And one of the publishers said, hey, Dan, you know what people do? They just go get your videos transcribed, and that becomes the basis of your book.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I sent in this hour-plus video, and it comes back 12 or 13 pages. And I'm like, what? Only 12 or 13 pages? So I had to start writing. And this is what I'm interested in kicking back to you. What I found is if I can embody something and speak about it in the way that I have internalized it, that I believe in it, and I'm not trying to, quote, write, I can really step into this. If I have to, quote, write about something that I don't feel that confident in, I'm not really sure of the content, it's a whole nother realm. And the last thing I'll say is a friend and colleague who specializes in this area of education had told me years ago, we don't teach our students to be writers, we teach them to be authors. And as you know, one of the dyslexic strengths is finding a way to understand something in a way that your brain understands it to make the connections for everybody else.
Right, and that's the magic.
And
the challenge. That's all the mnemonic devices.
Yes.
And it's exhausting.
Don't you find, though, that it's exhausting when you have to put it in that memory, but it flows when it's knowledge that you possess?
Well, yeah. And that's, and it's also coming to terms with, I'm an intuitive learner. And accepting that and which is you know, and um, you know, people just don't have a concept of what it's like to not be a good reader, and the implications and how difficult and how much we take that for granted. People take it so for granted, and they think of us as being sometimes often lazy, and we're not smart, you know. Um, and I can't agree with you more about something that you know it take. You know, I don't want to. But that's true with anything. Like I don't want to. I don't want to. I have a very strong BS meter.
Yep.
You know, and I don't have any tolerance for it. None. So when I see people coming down the road with you know, I just go the other way. But you know, it's and I think there's also a lot of integrity, because it's not about getting over. It's about understanding and accepting maybe a different perspective. I mean, you know, you start opening up a whole Pandora's. I haven't done that much sharing of the trauma.
Right.
There's a tremendous amount of trauma that's associated with dyslexia. And, you know, looking at things and hearing things and seeing things in different ways. I mean, like, you know, the other thing about writing, I could never have written without a computer. And I bought my first Mac, and I mean, I think I'm probably older than you. I'm 67.
Okay, I'm 54.
Okay, so, and I bought my first Mac, and a Mac Plus, like in 87 or 88, something like that. And I've been a Mac guy ever since. And it's without a Mac, without having a word processor, I would never have learned how to write to begin with, because my handwriting is atrocious, and it's really hard. My spelling is terrible. And the being able to just say something and write it down and type it out and then work on that has been a tremendous way to get it out. And my wife taught me how to write. And she said, just be active. Do the active voice. You know, don't go off with this flowery stuff and all that other stuff that you're trying to think this. So I'm making a long story out of but
all right, I have a lot of thoughts. I know we're gonna work our way to your system that impacts kids' entire life. So we're gonna go there, and this is all really important for everyone listening. And you know, your work and program impacts special needs kids just as it does with neurotypical kids. And we're talking about neurodiverse kids, and many of us dyslexics were in those classrooms, on those short buses back in the day. We're just considered special needs without the understanding. And I don't want to gloss over, there's so much I want to say. I don't want to gloss over the trauma. And I know we're not going to get into that in this show, but to acknowledge that when one is in a situation where they are not understood, they don't understand themselves, there's classroom, teacher, societal pressures to meet certain milestones in a certain way. There's a lot that goes with that. And I wanted to share with you, I sometimes share as well, that I must have been about 40 when our third of three kids was diagnosed with dyslexia. And our dyslexic, 38, somewhere 38, 40, and our dyslexic expert consultant, who we got to know very well, turned to my wife and I and said, well, you realize for 3 out of 3 genetically, that means you both are as well. And all of a sudden, and she said, think, Dan, about what you're good at, what you do in your profession, and what is really hard for you. And my whole like life flashed before my eyes. Here I am as a licensed psychologist who co-founded a center, who's directing it, who has written, I think at that time I
Right.
had written a book, and it was the first time in my life that I felt smart because I had a reason to put into context why I never did as well as my smart friends. I was always invited to go into those advanced classes, but could never even figure out the test. It's like, so it just all came.
God, wow, that's really. So your wife is too,
She is too, and we have completely different profiles.
right?
Right. She's the one that devours books and doesn't remember them until she reads them again and goes, I think I read this. And I remember everything and read very slowly. I read so slowly.
I think I'm probably between both of you.
Yeah.
So, because it's such a broad term, it's an amazing, and all three children have it.
Yeah.
So at least, like when we grew up, certainly when I grew up, nobody knew anything about it.
Right.
I mean, that was like, in the 60s. Wow. That's some really, And, they say that dyslexics really achieve a tremendous amount.
Mm-hmm.
They go on to figure out how to make the best of their challenges.
Yes.
And move on.
Yeah. Jack Horner, who is a famous paleontologist who helped Steven Spielberg with the Jurassic Park movies, severely dyslexic, and he speaks about it. And he says, do you know why dyslexics think outside the box? Because we were never in it in the first place.
I sometimes call myself a left-stixic.
There you go. There you go. But so this all goes into how you had to learn
right.
And how you had to bob and weave and figure out your own ways to figure things out.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess, it enabled me, it enabled me to have a sense of, I want to say humanity, but that's like this convoluted kind of, it's just a calmness with differences. And it was through working with some amazing special needs kids that I realized, I'm a musician, I've been playing music for years and all this stuff, that I realized how, and I'd also done a bunch of sound design for commercials. So it's like, orchestration is kind of, it gets into a whole other thing just about sonic qualities of sound, how high, how low, how loud, how quiet, how long, how short. And, but I was able to see how just making sound and not music, which comes before anything we call music, everybody loves to do it. And it becomes I'm jumping right into this, and I hope this is okay.
Yeah.
Because, one of the things that as I do more podcasts and I'm gaining more insight and I'm thinking about all this stuff, there are certain key elements that I think that making sound provides for all children. And it doesn't matter who the child is. It doesn't matter. Everybody, it's like we are hardwired. It's part of our DNA to make sound because it's collaborative, it's communicative, it tells stories. You can express emotions with just sound, no words. And I think that what it does is that every child, they don't have to learn anything new. All they have to do is just be their beautiful, lovable selves. And when they make sound, for that instance, as they're making sound, they are controlling their environment. And it's kind of like it's the only way a child really can have that kind of power, in a sense. I mean, it sounds like an abstraction, but they can make a sound quiet I'm kind of there with everything. Or they can be really loud and make it really and be somewhere in between, right? And what it's all about is having a different perspective on what sound can be. And we are all so sound asleep. We are sound asleep because we're not thinking about it. It's so easy for us to not be in the moment and tune it out. Tune out. And what is it? It's demanding to listen. It's to be in the moment, to think and be in the moment. And one of the things that this whole process of codifying how to work with pitch, volume, and duration, and for anybody out there who's listening to this has, again, nothing to do with music. My biggest obstacles are adults. Because they say, these are people who know me, who know that I say, it has nothing to do with music. They say, sound, man, he's working with music. Oh, it's so great. Or I say, I work with sound with pre-K teachers. They say, oh, music, it's so great. And it's like, no, it is not music. It's sound. Sound comes before anything we call music. And so for anybody out there who's listening who doesn't play an instrument, but we all love music. And believe me, for me, who is a schooled musician, a serious jazz musician, this has nothing to do with music. It has to do with being sensitive and waking up to sound. And thinking about high sounds like birds or low sounds like a lion roar and how you want to do it. Pitch, volume, how loud or quiet. I don't know if you can hear me this quiet.
I can.
Or length, how long or how short, like one clap. And everything.
And I sorry, I just want to set the stage for people who are hearing, listening in and hearing for the first time. This is sound. It's what this sound does for children's brain development. I'm gonna say a few of these things, which is mind blowing to me as a child oriented psychologist, developmental, and working on for years with all of these things with kids. So this program that Hayes has created, it enhances self-regulation, executive functioning, social and emotional development, working memory, cognitive flexibility, independence, math and science skills, creativity, problem solving, mindfulness, active listening.
Well,
active listening. Yeah.
That's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And finally, increases self-esteem. Like if you name like any program out, every parent is looking for a program that can do these things. I don't think the first place people go, which is right, you're outside the box, your different way of thinking is through sound.
Right, through sound. Simple sound. It is so simple. And it works with any curricula or any subject matter. Right? I mean, it's like, let's say we want to count. We're going to count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
1, 2, 3,
3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Okay, so now took you a second to come on. I was doing all this.
Yeah, I wasn't getting the number.
The vibe.
Yeah.
But if you were a kid and the teacher starts doing that, and all of a sudden starts doing that, they all of a sudden start jumping in. And what was I doing there? That was just counting in different volume levels, repeating 1, 2, 3, 4 over and over again. I started at a medium, then I got loud, then I got quiet. And what you're doing is that you're challenging and engaging and focusing children to, number one, be in the moment, not go on automatic pilot, which is inhibitory control, self-regulation, right? Listening first and then speaking. Then we're making different kinds of sounds. So we're doing cognitive flexibility, which is also building working memory because we're doing it in different ways. We're doing it together. So it's social emotional learning and we're having fun. You laughed, right? So it's play based. And as that starts to evolve, you can pass that activity is perfect for transition times. And in pre-K, really, and this is what a couple of pre-K directors have told me. They've said, really, pre-K is all about transition times. It's all about how well children navigate from going from one subject matter to another. And the easier that becomes, the more school ready they become. And what we know about children is that, repetition, they love repetition. And repetition helps children feel safe and calm. So if you think about a transition, like one of the things that's really amazing is that most teachers, they hate transition times. I mean, it is it is the most challenging time of day. If they don't go well, it ruins the day. They think they have to have this huge tool chest and everything's got to be, But if you engage children again with sound, which is play-based and we're all hardwired, all of a sudden, and in this transition, which is really all of 20 seconds, what is a transition? The transition is to get your kids focused, engaged, so you can move them to another area, to another activity. Once they're engaged, it's done. That's the transition. So in 10 seconds, 15 seconds, you have your kids all counting at different levels of volume. Bam, bingo. The transition's done. Now you're ready to move the kids from the carpet to the tables. And it's like,
as you were doing your numbers, I found myself leaning in to really focus on whether you were going high or going low. And, so right there's that attention and focus with a lot of young, dysregulated kids. It also made me think about a former colleague of mine who ran a special day classroom for elementary school children who had all with regulation challenges. And what she had taught me is when things were in transition and were getting out of control, she would start to talk softly and everyone would lean in to listen to her and become regulated.
Yes, that's so beautiful. Yes, in silence. Children love to make silence.
Silence.
Actively making silence. Play silence. Wow. And so when we're also counting, we're doing math. And you can count backwards, you can count forwards, you can count all the way up to 10, you can count backwards from 20 down. You can change it up however you want. So the teachers now, all of a sudden, when I said we were all sound asleep, if we all wake up and start going, wow, sound. All of a sudden, teachers are telling me that they're reinvigorated. There's so many teachers who are, because as you were saying, they have so many benchmarks to have to hit, right? And they're exhausted. And they don't get paid well and they're burnt out. And that having this sense of control, back to what sound helps to do, but management as well, because it helps them manage their kids better, all of a sudden reinvigorates them and inspires them to think of new ways that they can think about how to do a transition. So now on the way to work and leaving work, instead of hating transitions and being so, they're now going, I wonder what I can do today or tomorrow. Or I wonder how I can use this transition for the next week and how we can work on this kind of material. And as the children begin to master it, because here's something else that's really important. All we're doing is making a deliberate sound in an intentional way, or an intentional sound in a deliberate way. And really, it doesn't matter if you make the sound that you're trying to make. So there's no wrong way as long as you're trying to make it. And of course, with practice, repetition, you're going to master it, which children love and need, especially at 3, 4, and 5 years old, because in 2.5 and 2-year-olds who are going to school now, because they're put in situations where they're scared. It's new. And when they have something that's repetitive and regular that they understand, they know, then they start to jump in and take agency and want to lead it. And as you develop a child's ability with being able to make different sounds, of course, if you don't change it up and add a little variety to it, they're going to get bored. So when you challenge them, you're just adding a little, not the whole thing. You're just going to tweak a little part of it. So now all of a sudden it becomes a whole new activity.
How did you, was this a aha moment, or was it cumulative when this came to you?
Okay, I shouldn't say this because I don't want to freak out anybody after I said it has nothing to do with music. And it really has nothing to do with music, okay? But it has to do with the learning process. I happen to have learned it through playing music. But if you're an athlete, or if you're studying anything, really, you're looking at something, if you really do it thoroughly, you're looking at it from different perspectives and different angles, right? So if you're bodybuilder, you're moving your triceps in all different ways, so that you're building. It's not just one way that you're moving it; you're other ways, so it's more complete. It's the same thing. It's the same muscle. All we're doing is flexing our learning muscles and saying, okay, and this is where we're sound asleep, because there's all different kinds of sounds. It doesn't even have to be words. Whatever it is. And kids who have learning delays or speech delays, who I have teachers who say, now that they've, what the teacher provides is license and opportunity to a child, right? They're saying, here's the opportunity, and by doing it, they're saying it's cool, it's fun, it's okay, let's work with it, giving license to that child. And by doing that, this teacher who had children with speech delays, language delays, whose kids came before she started working with sound, were reaching out and grabbing and hitting because they couldn't, they were frustrated in not being able to express themselves, right? Or hear or understand. Now, because they had been given the opportunity and the license to make funny sounds and all different kinds of sounds, not numbers, not anything, at different volumes and different ways, all of a sudden they were able to start to communicate with each other. And there was no more aggressive stuff, no more hitting, no more grabbing. And all of a sudden, so it's like, think about maybe a speech pathologist who could say, wow, okay, well, let's work with, what are the sounds? I'm waiting to find somebody, because I would love to know, like, what are the top 10 sounds that if you start playing with pitch, volume, and duration with kids who have language delays, what sounds resonate with them? There's probably a universal code of what sounds would be that would help them begin to get to words. So it's kind of like, wow, okay, start thinking about that. Maybe there's somebody out there who's thinking his mind's a dyslexic.
Yes.
Sound person out there is going to go. Speech person is going to go. Oh, wow, that sounds cool. But and from that everything grows.
It's gosh, I'm toggling back and forth from what you're discussing and then thinking about you as the creator of this, and how something you hit on earlier about being an intuitive person. And one of the dyslexic strengths is intuition. And it's something that you and I certainly were not taught about in school, or were never encouraged to trust our
No,
instincts, our intuition. And I think,
no,
fortunately, more and more there's talk about this. So I want to highlight this for our listeners, is intuition is a human capability, and some people are born with more of it than others, but everyone has a degree of intuition. And when we help kids learn about and trust their intuition, we're telling them to trust themselves.
absolutely.
And conversely, when we tell them to just focus on the data, focus on the facts, not focus on feelings or knowing where you can't actually describe it, we're actually taking kids away from themselves, doing the opposite of what your
Absolutely.
program does, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
And-
can I
yeah,
add to that a little
sure.
bit? So everybody is actually can plug into their intuition, and here's how. Okay. First of all, intuition is much quicker than intellect. I mean, it's like it is immediate. It's
Mhm.
like, and the way anybody who's listening to this can understand what I'm saying and say, oh, maybe he's got a point. When you're talking to a loved one on a telephone, you don't have to hear a word. All you have to do is hear how they're breathing, and you know exactly intuitively as to how and what they're thinking and how they are feeling. Even if they're trying to mask it, you know that they're not being sincere. And that's because it's your intuition that's hearing the sound and knows what that sound means. And our intuition is so much more honest and faster. And I love what you say about teaching, developing your intuition helps a child learn about themselves. And yeah,
Mm.
I think because like what the guy with the Jurassic Park says, we've never been in the box.
Right.
It's like, you go as a dyslexic, my highest verbal score back in the day when SATs were right. I mean, this is going to be embarrassing to say this to anybody. And I went to a very, I mean, um, after taking the SAT scores, and the highest score you get was 800.
Right.
And you got 200 points for signing your name correctly.
Exactly.
My highest verbal was 390.
Mm.
Now,
Yeah.
clearly I didn't know how to take the test, and clearly for people who take the test, who really do well, so many of those people they think it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's like it's 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 a it's a it's a it's a limited perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're challenged the way we're challenged, it's just it's
Right. Right.
and everything's hard.
Yes. Yeah. And so what's very cool about modern day, even though there's lots of stuff that's not cool about our modern day right now, but what is really cool is there are so many more paths to becoming an adult, becoming an individual, finding your niche, finding your path, your career, your passion,
Mm-hmm.
than when we were coming through. And we are I feel we're in flux of the question of higher education and the cost of higher education. And there's just so many pathways. So the older dyslexics, and many now which are still in the mainstream system, there is all this pressure to advance through these steps. And for anyone who is neurodiverse, dyslexia and beyond, it is very difficult to do that. And even if you can, it comes with a lot of anxiety, depression, pain, and you're still not going to perform to your potential because you're not equipped to do it in the way it's being asked.
Amen. Oh, man. But so this is one of the reasons why I absolutely love and adore Adele Diamond, the developmental neuroscientist. Because the reason why this is why I love her. And she was interviewed on the radio, and at the end she was asked, Krista Tippett had asked her, anything you want to leave your audience with? And she goes, yeah, there are a lot of people out there who have no degrees, no fancy job titles, no nothing, doing really incredible work, and we need to be listening to them. And I went, oh, she's my girl. I gotta call this woman. This is my people, And I did, and she met with me, and I've been blessed through Clancy, and then when I was writing my book, I was focusing on executive function skills because she's the godmother of all of this, and I'm thinking she's my mentor, and I have no relationship to the school. I have no relationship to her. All I am is just a person out here doing something, being a rogue warrior. Out here, and I was reading your titles of your books, The Warrior, and I've always thought of myself as this rogue warrior. And I send her my book, and she writes me this cryptic email, and I call her up because I'm freaking out. I said, Adele, isn't my book about executive functions? And the way I had framed it in the book is that everything I was doing was all about EF. And she goes, Hayes, she calmed down. She's the smartest person I've ever met. She's like, she takes no prisoners and and she slowed down and said, look, I love what you do, but why are you limiting yourself to just EF when what you do is so much more? And that's when you talked about having someone like that mentor be gave me license and opportunity to start saying, and I was 54, 55 at the time. This is not that long ago. This is, and it's and even now it's my experience of being dyslexic and opening up and sharing it really happened because a woman the great director of an excellent pre-K program who I taught her teachers last year is dyslexic. And her father was dyslexic. And he couldn't tell between right or left. And he had a business. He was a sailmaker. He successful, had a family. And you think, wow. And so many people would just say, God, that's lazy. The other day, I don't know if you do the spelling bee out of the New York Times. They have this spelling bee thing.
Oh, no, I stay away from those. Yeah.
Well, I stayed away and then my wife hit me to it.
Yeah.
And it has 7 letters, right? And it has, it has many, many words that they make, but you can get the word that's made with all 7 letters. And I look at it, and this is how my mind works, really. In less than a second and a half, I looked at it, I said, that's buoyant. And I said, right? And I looked at her and said, how do you spell it? Because then you got to spell
intuition.
It.
That's intuition right there.
Yes, exactly. It's yes, you finally, because that happens all the time. And it's intuition. Wow.
Right.
That's how I knew it, because I couldn't even spell it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so good. So good.
Really fun, Dan. And you must have you're a psychologist. You went to school. How did you deal with the exams?
They were really hard, and I wasn't identified, right? I wasn't identified. I didn't have extra time, so I didn't do very well, and I never felt very smart, and I worked really hard. I had math tutors from every year from middle school through graduate school. I thought I would never get out of graduate school because my last semester was advanced multivariate statistics. I'm like, I'm dead. I'm dead in the water. And it wasn't until I found psychology in college that I would excel in psychology, and I would do okay, so, okay, too bad in these other ones. And I realized that if I could use, I just understood people. I was fascinated with people, and it goes back to the intuition. The tests were still
Right.
hard. The tests were still
Wow.
hard.
Yeah, but how did you? But you know, your desire to to achieve your goal and what you had to struggle with to reach that
Hmm.
is pretty amazing. That's like your. I mean, that's that whole thing about grit
Yeah.
and what is it that that kept you, Dan, showing up every day when
Hmm.
and people who are listening to this, the trauma of feeling inadequate is so deep
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so easy.
Yeah.
It's like first thing out of probably it's first. You know what I mean? It's like a
Right.
first,
Yeah.
and that you stay. That's I love that. That's an inspiration.
Well, I appreciate that. And I want to also like add to that. And I'm curious from you is, okay, so being firstborn, I had that sort of achievement oriented focus, I think personality wise. And then I say I'm a recovering perfectionist. So that's a double edged sword, right?
Mm, yeah,
That drive and that fear of failure in a
yeah,
situation where it's very likely to fail. So I guess that can produce grit, but it's not all roses with what's, that fear
right.
of being less than. Did you have any of that perfectionistic drive in any aspect of your life?
I I knew there were elements that I couldn't perfect. My
Mhm.
reading ability. Even I worked on it. I've worked on it. I mean, if you were to play the piano and play two notes, I would have a very difficult time telling you what the interval was.
Mm.
And I haven't shared that with anybody really. And my reading abilities kept me out. And I didn't have, I would read and read and practice reading and went through tons of material because it's like, for sight
Mhm.
reading, you have to, you get a chance to look at something three times through, and then you got to throw the piece of paper away, or turn it upside down. Um, I found that the perfection was really about developing my ear and looking at everything in different perspectives.
Mm.
And um, and yes, I mean similar,
Mhm.
but not. I avoided. It's one thing when somebody, I would test myself as a band leader
Mm.
or a writer, a composer. I wrote for orchestral instruments, and every note was written down, every rest was written down. You know,
Sound and
sound.
silence.
Right, but it's music. It
Mhm.
was, and music within a structure that was hard, that was tonal, or if I wanted it to be atonal, if it was for film, it was like it's kind of like a crossword, not a crossword puzzle, kind of like a it's you're matching the emotion, or actually the music is another character. So how does the character play at that scene? Is it supporting the scene, or is it being something that's antagonistic to the scene? Is it how is it playing?
Mm.
So it becomes an intellectual pursuit, but it's also emotional because it should be emotionally driven. For me, it should be emotionally driven.
Mhm. Mhm. As we're winding down here, and you talked about these neuroscientists, collaborators, mentors, friends, colleagues of yours who were so instrumental in your adult life. I know early on in school you had written about, I think it was K3. You were really fortunate to be in a Reggio type school. A really
Yes.
are there people early in your life that saw something in you?
Not that yes, there were all of all of those people from the Reggio, but I don't
Hmm.
remember. I was there from four, five, six,
Hmm.
and seven. In fourth grade and eight. In fourth grade, I went to a different school.
Mm-hmm.
So and it was more along the lines of, yes, I got to say Jerry Pomeroy was the guy who was the head of the school, and he was a teacher of mine for a while, and he, it was like everybody wanted to play outside. So for 1 week, he said, okay, he got so frustrated with us. For 1 week, he said, okay, you guys can decide everything that we're going to do this week. And we spent the whole week, except for one geography game class, outside. And that was, and that was, and also the thing of they had a newspaper, and what they would do is they'd pair an older student with a younger child. And the child would, if they couldn't write, which I couldn't write, I would dictate a story. And then to see this, they had a newspaper that came out like maybe once or twice a year, to see your story in the little news or the little thing was just like, man, it was so wonderful. The frustrating thing for me, and probably why I is that I always wanted to get to music, and they never had any money because it was such a it was only a few families that were participating in this, and so there was never any kind of organized music environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was young, and I would go. My mother sometimes would do this theater program. She was with a character called Pockets at the Poughkeepsie High School for the early grade kids. And I'd go, but right off the stage was a band room, and I would perch myself. I was so little, and I'd be holding myself, and I saw these instruments, and I was just like, man, I want to get in there, the tubas and the clarinets and the trombones and the drums, and it wasn't available to me because so.
We can keep going. Okay, I want to bring it, before we go to the parent footprint moment question, I want to bring it back to creative sound play and tell everyone. I mean, I know you have so much confidence in this program because you've done it in classrooms. It's been researched. Like, what is it what is this? This is a gift to children, to people who care for children inside the classroom, outside the classroom. What is it? What is your mission with this program?
I feel blessed that I was able to see it and find a way to make it come to fruition. And there have been people that have helped me. One of them who's just passed away, Dorothy Lichtenstein, and her husband, Roy Lichtenstein, the pop artist. And I saw it, and I never did it for the money. I hope to make some money with it, and but I did it because it's right, and it's very important, and it works, and it's my mission is to be as much of service as possible. And so for my website, I have a quick start guide, a video curriculum that's available for people who want to do it. Now you can get a certificate if you do it and pass the little quiz, which is very simple. It's got 17 videos, and it's all really self-explanatory. The book has the quick start guide in it and a whole lot more, because you can take this whole, it's like the way in is through transitions. And then once you start to get into it, it becomes this whole generative eco-learning system where you can start doing all curriculum and subject matter. And then you can include hand percussion instruments and make all different kinds of textures. And that's like from January, let's say if the school year is September through December, you're really working with just the basic elements. And then you start to add hand percussions for a few months, 3 months for the winter time. And then in the springtime, you're building sound sculptures, and you could take kids' artworks. And if kids can paint and make their artwork in a conscious effort to how they want to organize sound, so that the picture becomes a roadmap. And it could be anything. I mean, I had an experience in a park the other day, and there was like 3 different, like ghetto blasters in different locations that all playing different types of music. And a kid could go to that and go and be aware and just have listened, spent time listening, because so much of what it's also about is being mindful and just listening to what's around us. And you could paint little figures. I was thinking I saw the whole little painting of a park scene where different groups, and one group could get louder while the other group is still there and playing completely different sound, completely, unrelated sounds, but that becomes a picture. That becomes a sound sculpture. And it becomes a group of people playing the same in cooperation with each other, project oriented, to be listening to each other or not listening to each other, so that they can play what the thing really is. Where it's, so it's just being aware of sound and allowing teachers to go, wow, I never thought about that. And then you can do narration. You can illustrate narration with sound, right? Orchestrate it. You can have kids dance, for those kids who are kinesthetic and want to dance. So, and then, and I do back to what you asked, because I went on to my tangent. I do coaching sessions, and I can do Zoom coaching sessions. I teach a class twice a year for the National Head Start Association. My program for essential transitions is on there. They have a new professional development online teaching portal called the Academy for Head Start, and I do 2 of those a year. So I can do this. I can do it for school systems. I could do the whole thing is to really be disruptive. That's an interesting term. I haven't been able to find I realized that, thinking about John Lewis, that disruptive is about getting into good trouble, right? And that it's not somebody being really disruptive, and
right.
It's about
shake it up,
but with an alternative.
Yeah.
Right, with a way through it. And this is really about doing that.
Beautiful. All right, Hayes. Can't get out of the parent footprint moment question. Here we go. Tell us about a time that you became aware of yourself as an individual, as an educator, as a caretaker, and as a traveler of the world. And that new awareness has had a positive impact on your life and those you care about.
So I don't have children. And I had an experience in 1992 with my nephew, who was 2 or 3 at the time. And my parents live in LA. I'm in New York. And I was taking a nap before getting on the plane to come back. And my nephew came and laid on top of my chest. And I had never felt that kind of open, unadulterated, pure love that a child gives. It was new to me. I had no idea what it was, and it was earth shattering to me. Because up until that time, I was like a jazz musician, just working, trying to blah blah blah. That was all that was important. And I got back to New York, and at the time, I was involved with a woman who was a director of development at an after-school inner city youth program called The Door that handled 6,000 kids a year. It still is around. And the whole focus of after the crack epidemic of the late 80s, early 90s, it was always I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand how kids could buy $150 sneakers. Michael Jordan, Air Jordans were coming out then, and kids were getting killed for them. I mean, it was like once a week, twice a week, you'd hear about a kid that was gunned down, and it was this, it was that, and it was these tragic moments. And that experience of having my nephew Michonne lay on me like that, in that purity, that just that purity, I became so afraid for him and so afraid for all of us living in this environment that I wrote this song called For the Children.
Mm.
And I wrote it. Richie Havens was always in. I don't know if you know who Richie Havens, but he's always been. I loved his music from when I was a child, and I sang it. I wrote this song with him in mind. I was hearing him sing it, and it's a really simple song. It's 2 chords, and it's a prayer. And I actually called him up. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know him personally, and somehow I got his number, and I called him up, and I said, "This is what I'm doing. Would you sing it?" He said, "Yeah, sing a little for me." And I said, "Okay." I'm singing the song to Richie Havens, and it's like a cappella. I got halfway through. I said, "Look, Richie, I can't. I'm singing to you. I can't be singing this. This is like ridiculous." And he said, "I'll do it."
Wow.
And 6 weeks later, he recorded it, and there was never a piece of paper in between us. He was an amazing man, and I went on to. It changed my life because I went on to make a 16-minute film about. It was a hybrid music video and kind of a documentary called For the Children. And it was pointing to programs and adult intervention, because at that point I started working with 4 different community programs, and I was mentoring kids who had been incarcerated at Rikers who were trying to turn their lives around. And then I started running a music department at the door. And I which led to all of this. So that's really the essence. So you're asking,
there's the full circle. There's this full circle. Wow. That's beautiful. And the other thing that just really I'm struck by is when you have a feeling and are moved, you reach out to people and they say yes. Right? It's like this intuitive, like, it's like you're not thinking it like, I heard her on the radio, I need to call her. I met this guy, I need to talk to him. Richie, I don't know. I'm just gonna call him. It's just it's like almost this like natural flow or energy that leads you without pretense to just ask a simple question.
Yeah, I guess some people would say that's nerve.
Chutzpah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, you are. I have to tell you, Dan, this has just been an absolute treat for me to speak with you. Really, it's you're a fellow traveler, and it's I would love to speak more with you. You're just
let's do it.
Where are you located?
I'm in Northern California.
Oh wow, damn.
Yeah, we got a little ways between us, but we got technology now.
Yeah, we do. It's beautiful.
So
thank you so much.
I'm glad we're connected. Really appreciate you. Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate you, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share, to speak with you, to find out about you, and to share what I'm doing with you and your audience. It's a blessing.
It is. It truly is. I feel the same. And everyone listening, this creative sound play, I have read the book. It is laid out so user friendly. And it just takes you step by step into how to implement some or parts. Of course, if you are in the classroom, it is a whole curriculum. For anyone outside the classroom, there are so many different exercises that you can implement in your own home, in your programs, after school programs. And it really, what is so amazing about this approach that Hayes has created is it does superimpose on anything you're doing. It's not something, you don't have to remove something in order to do the program. It goes on top of daily life.
And the other thing I want to say, if you're new to it and you're afraid to look silly, it's great. Look as silly as you can look. It's even better.
The kids love it.
They do.
Kids love it. All right, everyone, share this, please, with everyone you know. Thank you for being a part of this wonderful community and bringing all of your amazing friends and family to this. It is all about you. We're all in this together. You know what I'm going to ask you to do? Try to be that person you want your child to become, and ask yourself that guiding question: what footprint do you want to leave? This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Strummer Man, composed and performed by Pro Tunes. Artwork is by Garrett Ross. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Parent Footprint Podcast and on Twitter at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, go to exactlyrightmedia.com.